Vanguard recently posted an article around 5 steps for retirement planning, and I want to break down the 5 steps and give my input on additional information I think you need to be aware of as you process these 5 steps. We'll also link the article below for you to check out. The first step in the retirement planning that they talk about is make sure you have enough money. Now, this may seem like a no-brainer, but obviously if you're going to retire, you need to make sure you have enough. And having enough, that answer is going to be different for everybody. Obviously, everyone lives a very different lifestyle. Location that you're retiring is going to affect that. How much other benefits and pensions and incomes that you have, how much you paid into government pensions. There's a lot of factors that come into, do you have enough to retire? Now, the article talks about typically you need about 75 to 80% of your pre-retirement income to live retirement. I would say that's probably about right. I always say your first 5 to 10 years of retirement, kind of that go-go stage of retirement, I like to get clients as close to what you were spending pre-retirement as in retirement, because I'm a big believer in, as you gear up for retirement, start enjoying. Like, don't kind of go hold all your retirement aspirations and goals and bucket list items until the day you retire. You want to start doing a little bit of that before. So as you transition into retirement, there may be some costs that go away, like traveling to work, and there's some expenditures there. But overall, I want to try and get as close to what you're spending pre-retirement for that go-go phase of retirement. Then as you enter the slow-go phase of retirement, typically 75 to 85 years old, then it should scale back to between 60 and 70%, and then down from there in the no-go phase. So again, if you're wondering, like, how much am I going to need in retirement? 75 to 80% is probably a really good goal or ballpark for you. But if you can get close to 100%, I would say that's the better place to be. Now, when you're figuring out, do you have enough? You have to remember, it's how much you've saved, if you have any government pensions, and also CPP old age security. Those items will also add to the bucket. So as you look at different dates and timing and stuff, make sure you're incorporating all of your assets. And again, there's a lot of articles, and we've done some videos on it. You know, you need $1.7 million to retire. Well, we just recently did a video on, can you retire on 125 or 250,000? And I think it's very doable. So make sure you work with your financial planner to run the numbers to see if you can retire. Because a lot of the fluff out there and the big numbers out there probably don't apply to you. So don't get caught up in that. Make sure the plan is for you, the numbers are for you. Everyone's different. But make sure you have enough before you enter retirement. Because I talked to someone the other day, they're on their 3rd retirement due to bad planning. Now they finally reached out to us. Don't make that mistake. The second item that Vanguard mentions is to consider your expenses and including your healthcare. And so here in Canada, you know, a lot of our healthcare is taken care of, but there's still a lot of dental coverage that you got to pay for and other expenditure healthcare. So you're not going to have full coverage based on what you need. So there's medicals, all that kind of stuff. So typically we see our retired clients budgeting about $1,500 to $2,500 a year for medical. Now I know you can have that big expenditure that is unforeseen. Again, most provinces have a bit of a healthcare. In BC here, we have Fair Pharmacare, which kicks in once you spend a certain amount of money, depending on your household income. There's a bit of an insurance buffer and protection there. So again, understand what kind of coverage you have in your province, in your state that you live in, if you're in the US, wherever you are. Understand, where's that coverage? How much is it? And how much do I think I'm going to spend? So make sure you understand that. Other expenditures, like I said, if you can enter to retirement with about 90 to 100% of what you're spending pre-retirement, that's a great position to be in. But unfortunately, for most of you, that's not going to be the case. But that's okay. If you can have that 75 to 80%, you're going to have a lot of cash flow to enjoy retirement, to travel, to hit the bucket list items you want to hit. So as you review your budget and prepare for retirement, review your budget. And again, I know a lot of you, as you get close to retirement, you don't live on a budget. I don't live on a budget right now. I know what I make, I know what I spend roughly, but I'm not a detailed budget guy. It drives me crazy. But for many of you, you need to do that because you're spending more than you make. You have no idea what you're spending. I have a really good idea. I could tell you probably within about $50 what we spent last month. So do I have a budget? No. Do I know exactly what I'm making, what I'm spending? Absolutely. So there's different ways to kind of budget on your end. Do what works best for you. I figured out a solution for myself. You need to figure out one for you. A lot of you have no idea what you're spending. And as you get closer to retirement, I encourage you to look at your expenses and look at things that are not going to continue into retirement, but also look at expenses that aren't currently here that you hope to have in retirement, i.e. travel and other things. So again, your budget may not drop down that much, but figure out where that's going. And you also, it's a good thing to review kind of where your money is being spent once in a while, because you probably have $50, $100, few $100 going out the door every month that you could start saving. Maybe there's some subscriptions there that you don't need anymore, you don't use, you didn't even know you had, right? That's where it's good to start reviewing this every once in a while. But as you gear up to retirement, understand a general idea of your expenses and what of those expenses will carry into retirement. The third item I talk about is understand how your age and retirement age affects your government benefits. So here in Canada, how it affects your CPP. If you retire earlier, you're going to have less years paying into CPP. How does it affect the overall benefit of it? And again, if you have a defined benefit pension plan, which I know a lot of people do not, but a lot of you do, if you retire earlier, your pension's going to be less. Is it worth waiting another year, working one more year to get that extra little bit? Again, these are things you need to calculate and figure out. With CPP, the Canadian Pension Plan, we have many, probably 100 videos on CPP now on the channel. So check those out if you want to learn more. But when we come to CPP, like if you're going to retire early, 50, 55, a lot of people by default think, well, I have less years paying into CPP, so I want to take it at 60 as early as possible. And that typically doesn't make sense. So again, run these numbers. Yes, your CPP will be less if you retire early, but that doesn't necessarily change when you should be taking it. It might, but it probably doesn't. So make sure, again, you understand, because I'm retiring early, I'm going to have less CPP, less Social Security in the States, or whatever country you're from, your government benefits are probably going to be squeezed down a little bit. It's going to affect your overall income for the rest of your life. Will you still have enough? So just make sure you understand how those social benefits, how in Canada here CPP work based on your retirement age and how many years you pay into it. The fourth item that Vanguard talks about is to make sure you have a plan to pay off your debts. Now, I encourage everyone to pay off their debts and enter retirement debt-free, but for a lot of people, it's just not doable. Maybe you had kids come back into the home, you had aging parents you had to help. There's many factors why people enter retirement with a mortgage or other debt. Now, when we talk about debt and retirement, I always say, if you have a mortgage and you have a plan to pay it off and you can afford to pay it off, perfect, that's fine. Let's build that into your plan, make sure that cash flows aside, but you still have enough to enjoy retirement. If we're looking at credit card debt, home equity line of credit, things that don't make as much sense, it's kind of a bad debt as you enter retirement, I do encourage you to make a plan leading up to retirement to rid all of that bad debt before you enter retirement. Typically, you're going to be paying a much higher interest rate on that. So look at ways you can pay that down before you enter retirement. Because if you enter retirement with some bad debt and it starts to snowball, it's going to put you in a very tough position, maybe even have to go back to work if you're not careful there. So again, if you have a mortgage and you're worried, I can't retire before I pay off my mortgage, that's not necessarily the case. We do a lot of retirement plans with a mortgage there. It still makes sense. There's enough cash flow. So sit down with your financial planner to figure out, okay, I have a mortgage. How do I incorporate that into my retirement plan, right? I think as a culture, we think, no, you can't have a mortgage going into retirement. But the reality is, of course you can. There's no issue with that. As long as you have enough cash flow, money coming in to pay the mortgage and enough money left over to do the things you want to do in retirement. The fifth and final one I think is the most important, and it is to make sure you set up your savings to reach your retirement goals. And a lot of you might say, yeah, Adam, that makes sense. But the reality is, and this is why I say the best time to get a retirement plan done is about 5 to 10 years away from retirement. Now, will you need a plan update right before retirement? Quite possibly. But the reason I like that runway of 5 to 10 years, beyond 10 years, you might have a lot of moving parts and whatever. Get a financial plan done, make sure all the moving parts are done right. But as far as retirement planning, like gearing up for retirement, that 5 to 10 year window is a great spot to be, because if you need to make adjustments, you have the time to do so. So again, I talked to someone yesterday on the phone and it was around, look, I think I have enough to retire, but I'm about 3 to 5 years away, but I don't have a TFSA account. Should I start building one? And I said yes. Like, I think that probably makes sense. We need to kind of look at the overall structure as we work on building out a plan. But entering retirement with a tax-free savings account is a great tool to have. It's probably one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful tool in retirement to create flexibility, tax planning, all of that. Where you're saving as you lead up to retirement affects your overall income and tax structure in retirement. So are you saving in the right direction? Are you doing things the right way? Are you structuring things the way you need to structure it, especially those last 5 to 10 years, so that you enter retirement in the best position possible? Now, most people reach out to our office to have a plan done, 1 to 3 years before retirement, or even a few months, or even in retirement. A lot of people, we did one the other day, they're like 12 years into retirement, and they realize how bad they're doing things. Look, it's never too late. We do plans for clients in their 70s and 80s. It's never too late. But if you can give yourself a bit of runway to make sure you're saving in the right direction, in the right tools, in the right accounts, leading up to retirement, you're going to put yourself in a better position for retirement. From an income, tax, structure, flexibility, cash flow position, there's a lot of moving parts when you hit retirement. So if you can start setting up those parts leading up to retirement, it's going to be much better for you. So there's your 5 steps that Vanguard talks about. Again, I think there's about 500 steps that you could take as you plan for retirement. There's nothing here about the psychological side of things. And we do a lot of videos on that. We just did one interview with Riley there. If you haven't checked that out, check that video out. It's great, the 4 phases of retirement. As you plan for and gear up for retirement, there's the financial piece, which we talked about today, like preparing for retirement. But there's that psychological side as well, and they need to come together.